Hello again and welcome back to our course on Excel 2019 Advanced. In this section, we're going to start to look at text functions, but instead of going through the text functions one at a time and demonstrating what each one of them does, I'm going to do a very specific exercise using a range of text functions. Now, I'm going to assume that you've used basic text functions before, and I'm also going to assume you are familiar with the use of concatenation, either using the ampersand symbol, or if you're using Excel 2016 or 2019, the concat function. But some of the functions I'm going to be using in this section may well be some you haven't used before. Now, the basis of the exercise I'm going to do is that I've been given a long list of employee details, and for each employee, I've got 5 pieces of information. And in a text file, I've got about 20 employees' informations, just as sort of a test sample. And I'm going to see if I can use Excel's text functions to basically tidy this data up and to reveal the structure in the data. I've opened the data here in Notepad so you can see that text file. And if you look in the first row, there is an employee name. There is a number, and I believe that's the start date. Then we have the salary, and then what I believe is the department he works in, and finally his job title. Now, these 5 pieces of information are separated by semicolons. What I want to do is use text functions to split the data up for each employee, and I want to end up with the data for this test sample neatly structured in an Excel workbook. Now, one thing that probably is obvious is you could say, well, why not just type it all into the workbook just using this Notepad file? As I said before, this is basically a sample of about 20 people. And let's assume I have thousands of people, and what I want to do is put together a set of formulae and functions that will work on those thousands of people, but I want to test it out on just this select group first of all. Now, I'm going to close this text file and open it up in Excel. So let's go to File, Open, and I'm just going to browse to where I have my Notepad file saved. And there it is. And when I click Open, you'll see we get the Text Import Wizard. Now, using the Text Import Wizard, I could say that this is a delimited file. So the semicolons are used as delimiters, and I could get Excel to split the data up into 5 constituent fields. Now, I could do that, but on this occasion, I'm really trying to demonstrate some of the more sophisticated text functions, so I'm not going to do that on this occasion. What I am going to do is stick with the default setting, and I'm going to stick with the default of tab delimiters. As you can see from the preview window at the bottom, it's going to treat the contents of each row as a single field within the row, so it's not going to split up each row at all for me. Now, I realize, of course, that under normal circumstances, you'd declare that the semicolon is the delimiter and get Excel to do all the hard work for you, but on this occasion, I really want to show you how to use some of the text functions. And click Finish. Now, what I end up with is a new worksheet, and all of the data is in one column. So if I just widen that out slightly, you can see that all the information is within column A. Now, in the early stages of working on this file, what I'm going to do is make 1 or 2 really deliberate mistakes. Now, before I get started on this, if you're not too familiar with Excel text functions, take a look at Excel 2019 Help. On the text functions page, you'll see a list of the functions, which of course include the ones that we're going to use. And there are 3 functions we're going to look at the beginning. And the first one is lower. So it's pretty easy to figure out what that does. It converts all text to lowercase. The upper function that converts text to uppercase. And finally, we're going to look at the proper function, which capitalizes the first letter in each word of a text value. Now, it's the proper function that I'm going to demonstrate first, and what I'm going to do in column B is to use the proper function. So I'm going to type in equals proper, open bracket, and you can see the argument there is text. So I'm just going to select cell A1 close and hit enter. And again, if we drag the column out to give it a little bit more room, you can see there that Excel has done a nice job of converting all of those words to proper case. It doesn't get it right in every instance, but it is normally fairly good at working this out. So you can see here, if we just take the first part where it says Juarez Jose, that those have now been changed from uppercase in column A to capitalizing the first letter of each word. Now, assuming I'm happy with that, which I am, I'm going to fill it down. So a nice quick way of doing that is to highlight all the way down and then Control D to fill that down. And again, I can double click just to widen that column out. Now I'm going to make the first of those mistakes. And the first mistake I'm going to make is to say, okay, that's much better. So now I can delete column A. But look what happens if I do that. Let's just delete column A. And you'll see that immediately I get an error. That's because the formula proper was referring to values in the cells that we've just deleted. And of course, the consequence of that is that column B doesn't work anymore. So one thing to bear in mind is to make sure you don't remove any data that you need. Now, of course, there is an alternative to this. What I could do, and let's just widen out column C, is I could highlight my data in column B. I could go up and do a copy, click in column C, and then do a paste values. And what that does is essentially throws away those underlying formulas. So I could then go in and delete both columns A and B. And that appears to have worked fairly well. Now you may think that's a much better way of doing it, but the problem now is that if this is something you're doing as a one-off, then that's probably going to be fine. But if what you're trying to do is work out a set of formulae and functions which you can use not just on a sample data of 20 people, but on 2,000 people, you can't really lose those intermediate steps. So what we really need to do here is keep the columns as we work our way through all of our data. Now, normally what I would do instead of deleting the columns out is I would hide those columns. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to select hide instead. Now the next part of the job is going to be to start to split up the information about each employee, and the first thing I'm going to do is separate the name from the rest of the information. The key to this is to locate the first semicolon character in the data in column C. The key to this is to locate the first semicolon character in the data in column C. And to find a particular character in a text string, we use the find function. So in D1, I'm going to put a formula, and it's going to be equals find open parentheses. So now I'm going to say I'm finding the semicolon, and that goes within quotation marks, comma, within cell C1, close parentheses, and hit enter. So what I now have in cell D1 is the location of that first semicolon, so I can see that it's the 14th character. The other thing I need to know is the total number of characters in cell C1, so I need to know the length of the string in C1, and the text function I use for that is the len function. So let's do that in column E. Let's make it a bit wider. And we're going to type in equals len, select cell C1, and that's all we need to do. So now what I want to do is to get the two separate parts of C1 into separate fields. So in F1, what I want is the string of characters up to the first semicolon. To do that, I can use the left function, which gives you the leftmost characters in a string. So equals left. The text string I want to take the characters from is C1, comma, and the number I want isn't actually 14 in this case because that would include the semicolon. So it's the value minus 1. And hit enter to confirm. And I can see that that is now working perfectly. Now what I want to do is put the remaining text that's in column C into column G. Now you might be able to guess what goes into cell G1 because there is also a write function. So again, what text string am I looking at? Well, we're going to be looking at the text string in C1. So let's type in equals, write, select cell C1, comma. So how many characters do I want from the right of the text string? Well, it's the length of the whole string, so E1 minus D1. And hit enter to confirm. And again, I can just do a quick visual check and I can see now that yes, the rest of that information has now populated in column G. And of course, we could do exactly the same and fill all of these details down. So let's highlight. And remember, you have that Control D shortcut, or you can select Fill and Fill Down from the Home ribbon. And if I look through all of those, I should see that it's worked successfully. Now, once you've completed that step, you might look at column G and say, okay, well, I can work on column G and separate out the first field in column G in a similar way. And in fact, that's one of the things we're going to do in the next section. But I have a few other things to explain at the start of the next section about what we've done so far and about a couple of alternatives that you need to be aware of. So the final thing I'm going to do is save my file as an Excel workbook. Now, when you're working on this kind of conversion, not only is it a good idea to frequently save your work, but you might want to take a copy of the worksheet so that if everything goes wrong, you can get back to your original starting point. I'm going to save this as a workbook now, and I'll see you in the next section.